So over the last 2 weeks, I rewatched every live-action Batman movie, including the new one, twice. And here's my ranking. At number 10, we'll start off with Batman and Robin. All I can say is that it's as bad as everyone else remembers it. At number 9, we have its homoerotic predecessor, Batman Forever. I give this one a slight edge because it managed to turn Tommy Lee Jones, Nicole Kidman, Jim Carrey, and Val Kilmer into bad actors, which is in and of itself quite impressive. Not to mention, it introduced the world to the Bat Nipples. Next up at number 8, Batman the Movie, in 1966, back when titles were named cleverly. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I thought that this movie would be a little harder to watch considering the distance and time, but it holds up pretty well. I mean, once you can buy into the whole campy universe, it's actually pretty hilarious to this day. I had a good time watching it. At number 7, now this is when the list gets a little controversial. I'm going with Batman 1989. Listen, it was the year of my birth, and I understand why this movie was such a big deal when it was released, and sort of what it meant for superhero movies moving forward. However, it just doesn't hold up well. I mean, it feels campy in the wrong ways, not like the 1966 way, more like bad dialogue and poorly delivered lines. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I love me some Prince, but the soundtrack did not fit the aesthetics well. I mean, Prince and Tim Burton just don't naturally click in my opinion. Number 6, Batman v Superman. Some of you might be a little surprised to see this so up high, but I promise you, go back and watch the extended edition. It is not as bad as most people remember it. I think it got a lot of hate when it was first released, and I was on board with that, but after giving it a break, coming back to it years later, and in spite of the Martha thing, it's not as bad as most people say. Not to mention, it still gave us one of the best Batman action sequences of all time. And keep in mind, from here on out, they're all great movies. But with number 5, I have to go with The Dark Knight Rises. There's not really much negative to say about this movie, to be frank. The dialogue, like all of Nolan's films, is top tier. The dynamic between Batman, Bane, and Gotham City itself is phenomenal. But Catwoman, although superbly attractive in this movie, seemed a little too fake and almost whimsical for this super realistic Nolan world. A bit off-putting to my movie-going experience. Number 4, another controversial pick, Batman Returns. Now, a lot of people do not like this film. I personally grew up with it, so there is a strong nostalgic factor to it. But I love it because it is truly a Tim Burton Batman movie. I mean, just look at some of these shots. It's also a Christmas movie. Watch out, Die Hard. At number 3, I'm going with Batman Begins. Every single time I rewatch this movie, I appreciate it and understand it on a different level. The best Batman origin film outside of maybe Mask of Phantasm. Following Bruce Wayne's journey through his reconciliation with his fear of bats, having to confront his past, and learning to manipulate his own fears to project it towards his enemies. All of it was just portrayed brilliantly in this film. But it still feels like the first part of a trilogy, and for that reason, my number 2 pick goes to The Batman. Okay, maybe there's a little bit of subconscious recency bias here, although I did watch all of the movies before making this list, but this feels like more of a complete movie than Batman Begins. I like that this is a different sort of Batman, or rather Bruce Wayne. It's almost as if he doesn't know how to be Bruce Wayne yet, but instead feels like he's Batman all the time. And I understand if some people find that to be a bit off-putting. I, for one, thought it was an interesting dynamic in this portrayal. In every Batman movie, the director tries to make Gotham City feel like a character in and of itself. None has done as good as this movie in that regard. The most tangible villain in this movie feels like Gotham City itself. It's as big as uphill battle. The Riddler and the Penguin feel like pawns in the chessboard that is Gotham City. And need I say, you guys knew when I started the list what number 1 is. The Dark Motherfucking Knight. This movie is not just the best Batman movie, it's in my opinion one of the best movies of all time. Again, Christopher Nolan's dialogue is always top tier. I mean, we're talking plot twists that are just executed perfectly. A score that sounds like God put together himself. Christopher Nolan's use of practical effects, stunts, and wide-angle IMAX shots is beautiful. And we got one of the best performances of all time with Heath Ledger's Joker. Right up there with Daniel Plainview in There Will Be Blood. Batman having to confront the fact that he is his own biggest enemy, much like all of us. The psychological torture caused by the Joker to try to prove to Batman that he's not that much different than himself. Every time I watch this movie, it is a treat. It will never grow old. I can sing its praises for days. Need I say more?